So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to start with this graph here. It asks us to graph the following, and it says y equals sine bracket x minus 30. And you can see nothing's been added or subtracted. Now I know that in the past I've been getting rid of my graph, but today I'm going to leave it there just to save some memory in producing the video. So y equals sine bracket x minus 30. So just like what we did before, I want to get as many marks as possible if you want to look at it that way. And remember what we did first is we always looked at the end of our function. So here, this is still the first place I'm going to look at. And what I'm going to put is I am going to draw a dotted line at whatever number that is. Now, obviously here it's 0 because nothing's being added or subtracted. So that's my vertical displacement. And as I said, I like putting a dotted line. And that's what I'll do here. I'm just going to put a green dotted line across there, even though I know it's just my x-axis. And you can't see it, but I have my axes. They are labeled. If you look really closely, there's a y and there's an x. The second thing that I look at is my amplitude. Now my amplitude here is 1, so I would normally put dotted lines at 1 above and 1 below the vertical displacement. So again, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to label that as amplitude. And I've got purple for that. Okay, and I do have it labeled 0, +1, and -1. Now this is where some of the work comes into play. Now, after I have those two dotted lines, at least a teacher looking at my work will know that I understand displacement and amplitude. So that if I run into trouble a little bit on the x-axis, at least I'll get something out of it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look here. We have one more thing that we're going to be adding, and that'll be tomorrow, and that's going to be a number in front of the x. So here I have our phase shift. Our phase shift is x minus 30, so it means that we are going to be moving to the right 30. So this is our phase shift. Phase shift, and in this case it is we're moving to the right 30 degrees. So what we have to do now is we have to look at our x-axis. So it's our x-axis that is being changed here. So what I do, as I said, there's two different methods. So the method we're going to do is we're going to bring up those important values. So it's something like making a table of values, but not quite, because we're just looking at the x values and we're changing them. So what we need to do, so we said right 30. Well, if I'm moving something right 30, that means that I'm going to be adding. So what I'm going to be doing all along here is I'm going to be adding 30. So we would add 30 straight down here. Add 30, add 30. Okay? And when we do that, it creates a new set of I was going to say 4 numbers, but there's 5 numbers there. A new set of 5 numbers, did it again, that we need to create our new values. So we have 30, and I'm just going to type them just because it's easier for you to read, I think. 30, and we end up with 120. And 30, we end up with 210. We end up with 300. And we end up with another 30. So we end up with 390. Okay, so those are our new values. And I think I have to make it a little bit bigger so it matches the other ones. So these become our new important values. Now, if you look closely at those numbers, the distance between each one of them is 90 degrees. Okay? 30 to 120, 120 to 210, 210 to 300, 300 to 390. So the distance between them is 90. Now, it's not that this is really hard. The problem is my first point starts at 30. Okay? So that means based on my grid or my ticks that I'm using, this number here has to be 30. So I'm going to type in 30. So this is my 30. Now the problem is I can't make the next one 120 because knowing when we graph, we're dealing with scale. So as soon as I put 30 here on the first tick, the next one cannot be 120 because this tells me that every single tick is worth 30. So that means I have to count. So I'm going to count by 30s. And let's see if we can do 30. So then we're doing 60, 90, 120. Oh, so there's 120 there. Okay, so I don't have to put numbers on these other two, but I have to leave spaces for them in order for my scaling to be correct. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my other numbers. So 2 spots. So there's 120. And actually remember, because everything is spaced evenly, the next number that I want is going to be on the third tick from that one. So if you notice, we went 1, 2, tick, 1, 2, tick. So this one here is going to be our 210. This one's going to be 1, 2, 3 is going to be our 300. And the last one is going to be 390. Then what we do is the same way as we graphed before. We look to see, and I probably should have had another box, we look to see what we're dealing with. This time we're dealing with sine. Sine starts in the middle and goes up. So this time, instead of it starting at 0, 0, it's going to start at 30, 0. Okay, so it's going to start here. Okay, then we also know it goes up, and the next place it's going to cross is at 120, back down to 210, 300, 390. Okay, and so now we have our points, and now it's just a matter of putting a smooth curve. Mine won't be probably really great because I'm using a mouse to draw it, but not too bad. Okay, and we put arrows at the end. Okay, so that's what it is. It's really not that bad, especially if you use this method. We'll do one more together before you start doing it. And this time we're looking at one that has, well, I have a couple, but we'll do this one. But we'll change it to, oops, I didn't want that. I think I'm going to change it, instead of it being a sine, we'll change it to a cos. And let's do a 45. Okay, so we have y equals -2 cos x plus 45. Now in this case, again, I'm going to look at to see I have nothing here. My amplitude is 2. Okay, and I'm moving everything to the, in this case, to the left. So this time I don't want to start my y-axis too far over on the page. I want to start over this way a little bit. So this time, if you notice, I just had a grid. So I think I'm safe to have it here. And I don't have a displacement, so I think I'll go here. So there's my x and y, and I need to label them as y and x. And I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. -1, 2, 3. And then we add our dotted lines. Okay, again, we do not have anything going. Oops, it's not a dotted line. Oh, well, that's fine. I'll make it dotted. We don't have a vertical displacement, so we're still, our middle of our graph is still going to be along the x-axis. There we go. There's a line for us. And then we go 2 above and 2 below. So at -2 and +2. Then what we need to do is now we need to work on those x values. So bringing up my 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. This time it's plus 45, so it means I'm going to be subtracting 45 all the way through. And if you happen to notice that I make a mistake, make sure you do it the right way. Okay, so let's take a look here. So we're looking at negative 45, 45, 135. I'm at 270 now, so 235. Nope, 225. See, I told you I'd make a mistake. And then we have, if we take away 45 from our 360, we're left with 315. Okay, so you can always do a quick checkup with that. Now, what that means is every square, it appears, is going to be 45 for us. So if my first square is 45, and that's a negative, and I think I should have made it a smaller number, but you'll appreciate it at the back that I didn't. So there's negative 45. So every square is worth 45. Oops. I'm going to clone it. And luckily for us, this one's actually easier than the last one. So it means that there is a line in between. So 1, 2, and there's my next number. So my next number on this one is going to be, no, it won't be. So sorry about that for a second. So my next one, I have a space in between, so we're looking at 135. And I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller so it fits in there nicer. 135. My next one is going to be 225. And my last one's going to be 315. Okay, so now we have those numbers there, and remember the note will be on the internet, so you can always access it there if you need to. And the last thing that we need to do is we need to look to see whether we're dealing with sine or cos. So this time we're dealing with cos. Cos normally starts at the top position. So again, it starts at the top position, but this time it starts at negative 45. Okay, normally it starts there at the top, but we also have a negative going on, and I really made that you can't see the negative anymore. So we have negative going on. So normally it starts at the top at negative 45. Because it's negative, it goes at the bottom. Every time we cross a dotted line in one of our angles, we put a dot, ping-ponging around. There we go. And it's a matter, again, of drawing a nice smooth curve through them. And you've got it. Okay, so it's not that the graphs look any different today. All it is we've moved them completely left or right. Okay, so that's really all that's happened there. Okay, so what's going to happen now is the teacher who's in charge is going to put some questions on the blackboard for you, and hopefully put PLO, please leave on, and I will take them up with you tomorrow. Okay, bye-bye.